And welcome on in, everybody, to the Check Your Brain podcast. Here, wherever you are listening or watching this, it's on YouTube, it's on Rumble, it's on Vimeo, it's on my Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. And every Wednesday, this podcast goes out for free, usually with a guest. Sometimes I'll do a solo episode. Today is a plug and play guest. He's somebody who's been on my show now. I think this is the third time. I've known this gentleman since he was hosting a radio show in Westchester, New York back in the day. You had me on. Now I return the favor and have you on my podcast. And that is Bruce Hall, longtime friend of mine. And he's also a supporter on my Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur if you want more episodes. So go check that out. And like I said, Bruce is a plug and play guest for me because I can just say two words and just let you go to town. And I have plenty of it. We're going to talk a lot of conspiracy theories. We're going to make Sam Tripoli look. I mean, anybody, Alex Jones, Sam Tripoli, we're going to give them a run for their money in today's podcast because I have a whole list of great stuff.
I'm a huge Alex Jones fan, big time. In his book, by the way, everybody in the country should own it. Ever since he got sued for how many billions of dollars? $5 billion.
Some are saying that it could be up in the trillions.
Well, he's not going to have to pay it because they're never going to find him guilty of telling the truth. I mean, that's the thing. And the other thing is he became when Fox News fired Tucker Carlson, they're best friends now. So now Tucker, believe it or not, he was a little bit on the other side. You know, he wasn't really a true lefty, but he's a MSM guy, right? His father was, he is. And what's happened is since he got close to our boy, now he is all over it. Tucker Carlson is. And that book, you got to read the book. I forget the name of it, but you'll know what it is, and it's by Alex Jones. And another guy wrote it with him, and the guy that wrote it with him has written books just like that for everybody you can possibly imagine.
Well, and the funny thing about Alex Jones is he got on a lot of people's radar. I think he was out doing stuff in the 90s. He had a call-in show in Waco and everything in Oklahoma City, but really got onto people's radar when he went to Bohemian Grove.
And the weird
satanic, sadistic rituals. What was Bohemian Grove?
Well, Bohemian Grove is this place where the New World Order and all of their close friends in government and a lot of families, but all guys, no women, go to this place. And really what it ends up being is a Freemasons satanic weekend. And it's actually a little longer than a weekend. Some guys get there a little earlier. I mean, they do everything you can possibly imagine that you would do at a Satanist party. You know what I mean? And when I think about those people, I think about, the people on Capitol Hill that did that stuff. Like Hillary Clinton and her girlfriend, John Podesta and his brother. All of those guys, and the guy that owned the pizza parlor, that said he didn't have a basement and he's got a huge basement with, it's incredible. What you're finding right now is guys like me that have been on this stuff since it happened and even before it happened. Guys like me were like, all my friends just thought I was nuts. Well, they don't think I'm nuts anymore. And most of them are listening to me now. And
oh, yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't care because guess what? We're winning. We're winning. And I'll tell you why we're winning. We got two people nobody else is going to have. We got God and we got Donald John Trump.
I think there was a tape, one of those famous Nixon tapes, and for the YouTube algorithm, I will say the word because I'm quoting it, but he said that Bohemian Grove was the faggiest goddamn thing he's ever seen. That's what Richard Nixon said about Bohemian Grove. Alex Jones takes a hidden camera in there, and you're seeing this Burning Man type of weird rituals of people who are the elites in society, the skull and bones types. And Now it kind of leads me to what we've been seeing recently. So last week in Davos was the World Economic Forum, headed
Mm-hmm.
up nearly 50 years ago by Klaus Schwab, this James Bond villain with a James Bond villain accent. And then you have all these elites that come together and share all these, and then it's gotten so creepy. And they're talking about Agenda 230 and 2030 and every Agenda 2030 and all these other things that we can roll our eyes over New World Order stuff, but you can't be blind anymore. And I think a lot of people are waking up to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all for real. I mean, it's actually happening. It's been happening for a while. Here's the thing: a lot of the people that we're seeing that are still like in the mainstream media limelight, they're already gone. They're dead, most of them. There are so many, and I'm going to say a word that a lot of people don't know much about, but you can read about it. Cloning happens. There are clones all over the world, but it generally happens to people who are worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. They'll keep a clone in case they need one. Um, I'm just telling you right now that there's no, Bill and Hillary Clinton are long gone. Do you remember the burial of H.W. Bush when when they had all the envelopes passed out, Tony?
Yeah, I do remember a little bit of that.
Well, those envelopes all were written and they were handed to all of the people you can imagine they were handed to. They were handed to the Clintons, the Obamas. They were handed to uh, the vice president Cheney, his wife. They were handed to 12 people in the first two rows of the church, and every one of them said, "I'm sorry, I told them everything." H.W. Bush. He was executed, and there were indictments. I saw an indictment uh, online, and I saved it for a long time, and I can't find it now. But it was an indictment not only for him, but one of his sons and the guy that used to uh, the gay congressman who used to throw parties for young boys.
Barney
They were
Frank?
yes, and he had a house, and it was about a 3-page indictment. And there was another guy that was indicted, and I think it was the father of a guy that is now a congressman in New England. And I'm not going to say his name, but everybody knows who it is. And all of those guys were tried. Listen, when military law works like this, if you want it to, you're indicted on a Thursday, you're tried on a Friday, you're executed on a Saturday. Okay. Sometimes you get executed 2 or 3 days later because they give you an opportunity to do certain things before they put you to death. Let me tell you what these people did to kids over the past century. They deserve, all of them deserve to die.
Oh
Every
yeah,
damn, every damn one of them.
and what's interesting about with the World Economic Forum is it's kind of proof that a lot of people have woken up to where we're not in the binary of Democrats versus Republicans. When I see people who normally I would respect that say, well, the Democrats have caused the banks to collapse and the Democrats, and it's like, no, it's not the Democrats because
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell, Nikki Haley, Brian Kemp, these are all the Bush family, the Koch brothers, all of this. It really is that uniparty versus everybody else. And I think people are kind of waking up to it. They see what that RFK Jr. is outside their mainstream now. Of
He's
course, Donald Trump
fantastic.
has been.
He's fantastic, by the way. And his book, Vax Unvax, every young couple getting married should buy it and do what that book recommends. Don't get any vaccines for your children.
Well,
Don't.
we'll talk about that because I know that that's going to be a
I
hot
wanted to
button
say
for
that
YouTube.
before I forgot
Oh
it.
yeah, and the real Anthony Fauci is it's a
That
tough
book,
read, but
that
it's
book,
amazing.
yeah, that book is a good book too. The real Anthony Fauci, and that leads you to vax unvax. Let me tell you, I loved John Kennedy. He died when I was 10. Okay, Bobby Kennedy Jr. was 5, but we have the same feeling about him. You can tell he was a great man. His Dad tried very hard to be a great man. And basically, the reason his father had the job he had, which was Attorney General of the United States, and he went after all the people that he knew were trying to kill his brother. And then after they did kill him, he really went after those guys, and that's why they killed him.
Now, what are your thoughts on as to why? Because I think I mentioned to you recently one of the theories that it could be Mossad. There wasn't just it's the lone gunman in the observatory and he's in the grassy knoll, that kind of stuff. That there's a little bit more to it. I know anyone who has a conspiracy theory podcast asks the question. They want to know about the Warren Commission with Kennedy, but what is your opinion?
Well, real quick, I want to throw a name of a movie out there. It's called JFK-X. JFK-X. Watch it. It's only about an hour and a half movie. I watched that movie recently, and I knew. Now, if you follow closely to
Trump, it just came out. Okay.
Well, yeah, not long ago. But if you follow closely with Trump and his group, who are, in the process, Q, all of that stuff, if you're following the good guys, the white hats, and by the way, Iowa, did you see what kind of a hat he had on when he won?
I did see that.
White hat. Donald Trump, just to let everybody know, he's the big white hat, and he is. He was asked to run for president in the late 1990s, and they were going to let him know when he could. Of course, after that, look what happened. 9/11. Now, 9/11 was the Mossad. It was actually Israeli intelligence and Netanyahu.
Larry Silverstein.
Yeah, but yeah, well, I mean, if you look, there's this other place that you can go on X, and this guy is very good, and he's not prejudiced at all, but he'll throw out 50 names of people that are involved with everything that's dark going on right now. He's a Jew. He's a Jew. He's a Jew. He's a Jew. Well, guess what? He's right. But here's the thing. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 handled a bunch of problems. There wasn't one plane that hit one building on 9/11. Not one plane. A plane didn't hit the Pentagon. A plane didn't hit the two towers, and the plane definitely didn't hit Building 7. I was going to ask
you about Building 7.
They just took it down at 5:30. They were doing interviews with people from all over the world, and they were talking about the Building 7 going down, and it was right behind them. It was still up. They just said that. It was incredible. There's not many people like you, Tony. I'm giving you you're a great guy. You're a smart guy. You can't really get over your head much because you consider everything when you're researching something. You look at both sides. You have to. Right.
Well, remember that it's interesting how a conspiracy theory, of course, the term was demonized back in the 60s. If you even question the narrative of John F. Kennedy, a conspiracy theorist, you may as well be worse than Hitler at that point.
CIA.
And it's incredible how many times these elites have lied to us. That if you said with the loose change stuff in 2002. 2003, you say, I think 9/11 was an inside job. You would be excommunicated from your family. That people are like, what are you talking about? How dare you say that? You say it in 2024 with all the information we know. And a lot of people are going to say, maybe I don't think it's an inside job, but there's a lot of questions that are needing to be answered, that it's finally become acceptable to finally ask some of these questions.
Well, the asking of the questions, we already know the answers. And Larry Silverstein was a good place to start. He bought the real estate a month earlier. He even paid extra for terrorism insurance.
Terrorism insurance. How about that?
Nobody even knew what terrorism insurance was. They had to write it for him. And it just so happens he's the guy that pulls all the buildings. they did kill a lot of people. Who knows how many people died in that, because they did away with the crime scene. They took everything from the crime scene and shifted it overseas somewhere. They did. I mean, they didn't even find everybody's body. They didn't even bother looking, because the more they looked, the more stuff they could find. The Mossad was behind it. There was a group of quote unquote students in one of the buildings for like 10 months, maybe. And there are pictures of them in the room. And what they did was they basically set up all of the explosives. If you look at both buildings, not 7, but the other 2, if you look at both buildings, they went down basically at gravity. It was a very well orchestrated demolition.
And I have to read this because this is Snopes, and we all know Snopes is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah.
So it says, did a World Trade Center leaseholder buy terrorism insurance just before 9/11? A longstanding urban legend holds that the World Trade Center leaseholder Larry Silverstein fortuitously took out terrorism insurance just months before 9/11. What does Snopes say about it? It's a mixture, which means 100% true.
Yeah, exactly.
If Snopes is the one who says, oh, it's kind of complicated. There's some truths to it. No, 100% true then. World Trade Center leaseholder bought terrorism insurance 2 months before 9/11, then collected double its value on the grounds that there were 2 attacks.
Yeah, Larry Silverstein isn't suing anybody last time I looked, and I don't even know if he's still alive. I think he is.
He is still alive, yes.
His son died of something happened to his son, but that happens to a lot of people that are Masons. You have to get rid of one of your own family members. Look at Joe Biden. He got rid of 2 of them. I mean, and by the way, for all you guys out there that even use the word Joe Biden, stop it. You make me sick to my stomach. He's been dead for at least 5 years. They're all dead. Joe Biden doesn't look anything like this skinny clown wearing a mask. I've heard that it's just an actor with a mask on, and they change from time to time, and he might even be working for the White Hats. Listen, Trump couldn't go after everybody literally after his election was stolen. For those of you that don't know his election was stolen, you remember when I used to have you on my show and I told you that, Tony, that Trump was going to win like by 5 points in 2016? Everybody
did say that, yeah.
Yeah, everybody thought I was crazy. He won easily by that. They said he didn't, but he did. And if you remember, the last day that Hillary Clinton even campaigned was when they threw her in the back of a black Escalade. They had arrested her. She didn't campaign the rest of the time. You know who did? The Obamas campaigned for her. And then you remember when she lost the election? Oh, and by the way, it was the same night. They actually found out who the winner was the same night when what's his name? The guy, John
Podesta.
He said she couldn't come by that night. She was too upset. She went nuts that night. And, she showed up the next day and it was over. But that was the first time anybody had seen her since 9/11/16. November, what was it? November 3rd, 2016.
November 8th was the election, 2016. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. November 8th. But anyway,
there's also others where people are saying that there's a John Fetterman body double.
Oh, absolutely.
There's like several of them.
Those guys. Yeah. And see, they do it and everybody knows they're doing it because the average person, let's just say the average person is in the bottom 50% right now. I'm not even going to say it's 50. It's probably more like 30 now. But if you're in the bottom 50%, you don't want to know about Fetterman. You don't know anything about Fetterman. You don't know if that's him. You don't know if this guy's him. He's got cauliflower ears on the left, and this guy looks pretty good, is a good-looking guy on the right.
He looks like my high school basketball teacher on the right. And
Yeah.
with the community notes, they say, well, the one on the right was taken in 2019, and the Fetterman on the left is the present day, which was 2023. But then there's others where he has a mustache on. There's others where he'll grow a beard really quick. And now the big thing is that John Fetterman or whoever is out there is on Twitter. Because here's the thing about stroke recovery. You don't recover this quickly from a stroke. Everybody has knows somebody, or it's been in your family that someone has a stroke, and the recovery, some days are better than others, but they're not coherent really. And all of a sudden, John Fetterman's like, I support Israel and Israel this and Israel that. And you're like, wait a second. What happened to the guy who said, hi, good night, everybody, just a year ago at the debate? Like, what's going on here?
Well, listen, when Trump went on his famed tour around the world, right after his he got sworn into office in 2017. He went around the world, and the first place he went was where? Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
And why? Because they were throwing out the son, and the old man. I'm sorry, they were throwing the old man out, and the son wanted him out, and they gave Trump the sword at the ceremony. He's the first person that hasn't been a Saudi that's ever gotten the sword presented to him. And you know what he told them? I know what you guys have been doing. It's going to stop. I need you to work with me. And they also, what else they gave him? They gave him about 3/4 of their gold bullion to protect. How about that? And that was just one place he went. He went to Indonesia. He went to Japan. He went to North Korea. He went to India. They had the biggest crowd they've ever had at this place in India. It was close to 500,000 people. The biggest. I mean, I think it only holds 200,000 people. The people of India love him. Now, you see what's just happened, and I hate to throw this out there, but you know me. I'm doing it so I won't forget it. You see who just dropped out of the race, right? 3 people, right?
Yeah, you had Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie.
Well, 4 people if you count Nikki Haley, because she's out too.
Yeah.
And let me tell you another thing about fake people. That isn't Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley's never been that ugly in her life. Nikki Haley is a good-looking woman. That woman is not Nikki Haley. That's just somebody wearing a mask that is trying to be her. Nikki Haley, Trump threw her out of the UN. You can't get thrown out of the UN because no one wants that job, But he threw her out because she was doing some stuff she shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah, she had no money. Then she all of a sudden gets some kind of board membership on Boeing, and then she's a multimillionaire. How'd that happen?
Well, gee, just the same way it happens for all of them. And what I do like about what's going on, I don't watch TV. I don't watch the news. When Trump's on, I don't watch because you can see it all that you want to see on X. Hey, X is right now where you got to be. If you're not on X and you don't, click for you at the upper left-hand side, you're never going to know the truth. If you click for you, you're going to see some of the best videos that you've ever seen. And
you're seeing it in real time. It's the first time that we've seen this since, I guess, the first Gulf War.
Some are older, but they're some of the best ones ever.
Because you're seeing, and we'll talk about this in our next our Patreon exclusive podcast, because I really want to get into certain shall we say religious groups. But I did see I say this without hyperbole, that what Elon Musk buying Twitter was the biggest thing to happen to free speech since the First Amendment. I think it's the greatest thing. Twitter is phenomenal right now, as opposed to what Meta and Google, the fact that I can't say what I want to say here on this podcast that's going on YouTube is proof that I can but I can say whatever I want and put it on Twitter.
Oh,
and as long as I'm not just saying racial slurs or anything like that, it's fine because it's free speech. However,
right.
Did you notice today when we're recording this? So we're recording on January 22nd.
Sure.
Did you see where Elon Musk is right now?
No.
Oh, he's at Auschwitz. He's with Ben Shapiro at Auschwitz. He's got the yarmulke on. He's kissing the ring right now.
That's a little interesting. There is some history of him that is a little shaky. But you know what? He's a young guy. He's been around for a long time. A lot of people think he's dead. Okay, they think this guy is somebody else. I tell you what, I like this guy, and I'm sure that I'm pretty sure that he and Trump talk. Does that make sense? I
Oh
think
yeah,
that
I mean it's clear that he's talking. He has let's just say non-leftists in his
yeah,
ear.
yeah, absolutely. And his mother's the same way. You know, the guy, in my opinion, says what he wants to say. I mean, who's like that, Tony? Me and you. I mean, if you're not telling the truth, what's wrong with you?
Well, here's what happens is when you have FU money and
Right.
you don't do anything with it, then you're a real problem. When you're seeing Mark Cuban, which is it's kind of funny because I pulled this tweet up really quick, but where is it? Yeah, this is from look at the date. It's from 2012. And you actually
Oh,
tweeted, you said if Cuban ran for president, I'd vote for him. The Donald probably never. How
yeah,
things have changed. And I said I'd actually vote for Trump. He's a jackass and I love it. And what's interesting is what we've seen now is that Donald Trump has ran for president. He won the first time around. He
right,
quote unquote lost the second time, but he's running again, the odds on favor to win right now.
right.
And Mark Cuban is an asshole
Yeah,
that Trump has said he is. He's pushing this DEI stuff, although he's vaguely discussing what DEI is. He's like, oh no, what's wrong with having a diverse workforce and promoting equality and equity and stuff? You're like, either you're willingly ignorant about it, or you're completely retarded. Like I don't know what's going on right now, but Mark Cuban has that kind of money. He has an opportunity to do it, and yet he's falling in line.
this was almost 12. It's 11 years ago, and I think I remember that. And I think I might have even called you and said, "Do you know anything about Mark Cuban?" Because I had a little dirt on him, and he's a strange dude. Does he have a lot of money? I don't know how much he's got now. He has a show still, I think.
He's
I
still doing Shark Tank, and he's
yeah,
still actually. I think he just sold
he
the
and Trump have a
Mavericks.
lot in common because Trump did TV. Trump is a communicator, and he doesn't care what people think about him, and he's exactly the same way. Cuban's not exactly like that. Cuban is kind of, from what I understand, Cuban's done a little bit of an about face himself, and a lot of people have been talked to because of the situation in the world and been negotiated with because there was dirt on him. And let me tell you, if you've got dirt, if the white hats have dirt on you, and what I dirt by dirt I mean something that is treasonous, okay, treasonous, or you know something that kills children, you know,
Hmm.
um, you're in trouble. And they've taken care of business already. We've been under. I don't know if you knew this, Tony. We haven't talked that much since the last time I was on. And when I was on, we were talking about all kinds of stuff. But since all of that stuff has happened, um, there we're in charge. We've been in charge since right before um, Biden was quote unquote sworn into office. He was never sworn into office. They gave him a funeral. He got a funeral. They didn't fire the 21 gun salute till Trump was there.
Hmm.
And Trump still has the biggest and best Secret Service group with him, and they fly in other planes. He's escorted everywhere in the world with like six F-16s. And
That's so. Here's my thoughts on with Trump right now is that you're starting to see it when we're recording this. So if you're listening well after, it might not be as relevant. But so Ron DeSantis over the weekend said, I'm dropping out. I'm supporting Trump. Nikki Haley, is trying to get some kind of cabinet position or VP or quote unquote, Nikki Haley is there.
yeah, he's not
Um,
even Nikki Haley. Yeah.
so it almost seems that if I were if I were the Democrats, and when I say Democrats, I'm actually meaning the whole Democrat Party. I'm not alluding to anything more at this time. I'd almost pave the way for Trump. I'd give him every opportunity, because they always talk about the threat to democracy. In 2024, there may never be elections after that. You have the guy who's Joe Biden, who's in his 80s, and then Donald Trump is in his late 70s. This is not the election to end all elections. But you'd almost think, if you wanted to attack MAGA and you wanted to attack Trump, wouldn't you just get it out of the way and just say, look, CNN will have massive ratings. We'll try to impeach him over some things. We'll be able to get back in power. Right now, it just seems that they're trying to embolden Trump's supporters that are behind him, that will take a bullet for him, literally, because you never know what's going to happen with these lunatics out here. What do you foresee is going to happen the rest of 2024? Like, is he going to be hauled up in court the whole time? What's going to happen?
No, I don't think so. The guys that are the white hats that I communicated with off and on for the last several years have all said the same thing. We're watching a movie. We're in charge. Don't worry about it. It's already over. These are guys that like 107. Okay. You know who he is, right? 107. He's theoretically John F. Kennedy Jr.
Okay.
He's on all the time on Facebook's pretty wide open right now, by the way. Facebook has never been this wide open, which leads me to believe, like the CIA agent used to say he owned the company, Zuckerberg. I think he's gone too. I'm pretty sure he's gone. I think Meta is busy trying to save their company. You know what I'm saying? If you watch, here's one thing you have to think about. If things are so bad, right, with the good guys, Tony, right? Why on earth is the stock market doing as well as it is? The stock market should be 80% lower if we were looking at all this doom and gloom, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It's almost as high as it was when Trump was there. Now, gasoline prices haven't come back to $1.59 yet, but they will. And it's not just that. It's a lot of things that are happening. Nasara is getting ready to kick in, where you're going to be trading your oil dollars real soon for rainbow currency, they call it. And the rainbow currency, they're in other countries like Iraq, the dinar. If you're trading dinars now you're trading for gold currency. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The dollar forever was what you wanted overseas. The dollar always traded higher than everything else. Guess what? We're in the lower 2/5 of the world market right now. But when Nasara kicks in, everybody's money, everybody's real estate is going to be worth more money, because there's not going to be any taxes. There isn't going to be an IRS. There isn't an IRS basically right now. There's no Fed. You remember when Trump crushed the Fed? Do you remember when he did it? He did it over a week's time. You know where the Federal Reserve people are working now? Department of Treasury. They're in their building. If you go to D.C., Tony, if I said, Tony, meet me in D.C., we'll spend the night there. I want to show you something. I would drive you around. There's no one home. Everybody's gone. Everybody on Capitol Hill is gone. There's nobody there. And there's nobody in the White House either, except Marines. I mean, Biden's certainly not in the White House.
Well, speaking of DC, that was the next thing I wanted to ask you, is about January 6th. So we've seen how many, what would be labeled as an insurrection at state capitals, at essentially everywhere, all over the place for decades. We've seen that going all the way back to Weather Underground in the 60s and 70s.
Had one in Richmond last year or 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And then yet we're still talking about something that happened 4 Januaries ago. That was a thing that occurred. And yet you're seeing Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, get 22 years. He wasn't even there. And you have Ethan
Supposedly.
Nordine, Joe
Yeah. So,
Biggs,
yeah.
everybody. Yet Ray Epps,
Yeah.
and this might get flagged on YouTube, but I don't care. Ray Epps is there, several videos telling people we need to go into the Capitol, not just go to the Capitol to
Bill with
protest
that.
his
You're
right
not
because
going to
he's
get
an oath
snapped for
keeper.
the truth. Yeah.
And
Look.
yet, what did
Yeah.
he get? He got some like a year in probation. He didn't even have to go to court.
No, he didn't. No, exactly. And he owns a big farm in New Mexico or somewhere.
Or Arizona.
Yeah. And let me tell you something. You know what his wife's job is?
What is that?
She's on the board of Dominion Voting Systems. The guys that
Oh,
she's on the board of directors. She has been with Dominion Voting Systems for 20 or 30 years. They've been fixing elections all over the world and in the United States for Democrats and Republicans for like 30 years. Dominion Voting Systems is it was really the force, along with the entire Democratic Party, because they made out in the election by winning seats, right? So this
yes.
was a big deal for them. They had to win. Tony, nobody knew who won any election for what? Almost a month? How does that work? When 4 years earlier Trump was elected, and at 10:30 we knew he had won. It's called because it never happened.
He was
What
appointed.
happened never happened. Yeah.
I love this Ray Epps thing because it says this is the
He's a
AP here.
sludge. Yeah.
Ray Epps, a target of January 6th conspiracy theories, gets a year of probation for his Capitol riot role. And I remembered last year, 60 Minutes did this glowing, gushing, just puff piece on Ray Epps. Now, you hear anybody in mainstream media or just regular, your next door neighbor Democrat would tell you, oh, insurrectionists, 22 years, you should have gotten double that. Yet Ray Epps, who was on video several times, not just the one where he's telling people to go into the Capitol, he's there at the first breach over there, and he's whispering into the guards' ears. And yet, how is this guy who's telling people to go in not get anything other than, a slap on the wrist is too much compared to what they gave him here. It's unbelievable what happened, but it just seemed that. And then when you bring it up to these mainstream people, they're like, well, he's apologized. He said he's an oath keeper. It's like, no, he just seems like he was a Fed, that there were feds on the ground, that they cannot tell you with a straight face, and they cannot tell you that there weren't feds on the ground undercover.
Yeah, on CNN. On CNN every day, because they're interviewing them every day right now, and all of them are lying or not saying a word. That's the FBI. Look, if you know people in the FBI, and I've known people in the FBI before, for a long time, some really good guys. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them quit working for the FBI, like as far back as 15, 20 years ago, because they just saw what was happening with the FBI. They were turning it into their own police state for the Clintons, for the
for the globalists.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the last thing you can do. The last thing. Do you remember when Julian Assange, who by the way is supposedly in prison somewhere still, do you remember he was the reason that Trump won the election? He's one of the reasons, because of him getting Hillary's emails. And everybody could read Podesta and Hillary's emails, and a lot of them were about molesting children. Anyway, they asked Julian about how many people he thought on Capitol Hill would end up in prison if they put all of the criminals in office. He said 95% of them. Guess what? The number I just heard was just barely under that. Somebody told me. That's why nobody's in town. They've locked them all up. The ones that deserve to be locked up. And if they didn't lock them up, they cut a deal with them, and they've got an ankle bracelet on, and they have federal marshals with them. You know who had the big, forget about the IRS hiring however many people it was they were going to hire 100,000 or whatever. Forget about that. Donald Trump hired like 1,600 federal agents before he got out of office. Well, why do you think he did that? Because that's who these people walk around with every day. If it's still those people, you see what I'm saying? They've already
Oh
been
yeah.
arrested. A lot of them have been tried. I mean, when we find out the truth, the, and I don't know if everybody will get the truth. Now, if they know somebody like me or you or somebody else that kind of pays attention to this stuff, they're going to know. And a lot of my people already know. Like I have people that I didn't meet until 2 years ago that I consider to be on the same level I am as knowing what the hell's going on. Dominion voting systems, that was the big one. I mean, those guys were just criminal. And by the way, you remember what happened in Europe, right? When after the election, they went over there and the head of the CIA, the lady that was the head of the CIA, got in a firefight with our guys, our like the good like the White Hats sent a bunch of Army Rangers over there, and they got in a firefight, and 5 of our guys got killed. Her bodyguard got killed. Gina Haspel is her name. Gina
Yes.
Haspel. And it ended up on the radio. It ended up on CNN or something for like 15 minutes. And they talked about how she got shot. Well, they were taking her to Gitmo. They turned her and they brought her back to the United States. About 5 months later, she resigned. But she had been long gone, because she went there to get the hard drives from the computers that they used in Frankfurt, Germany. The fixed election started in Italy. They used an Italian satellite to start everything, and they did everything they did literally via computer. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and on the topic of feds, because you're
Sorry to
mentioning
throw
about
all
the.
that stuff at you, Tony.
Oh
You
no,
know
no,
me.
no. It's
Yeah.
all very interesting
I didn't want to leave it
information.
out. Yeah, I didn't want to leave that out.
It's
You
like I'm going to have to watch this podcast again because I'm going to pick up on certain things and just write notes, and I'm going to go down this rabbit hole when I can't sleep. I'm like, oh, what, Gina Haspel? Okay, I'll just go through the
Well,
whole
yeah,
thing.
that's well, they're not exactly our friends.
So there's also more conspiracy theories going on about not only the three-letter agencies, CIA, FBI, and everything, that they've been weaponized, they've been politicized. This isn't a new thing that's been going on since the beginning for 100 years, since the Wilson administration. But now we're
Yeah,
seeing it with
yeah.
our military. And I think the vast majority of military members come from military families. My daddy served, my granddaddy
Yeah.
served, my great granddaddy served. And now every one of those, if you're somebody who's in their 60s, 50s, that you served, or like if you were in Vietnam, or if you were in any branch of the military, going all the way now to Desert Storm and Iraq War 1, 2, and even 3, thank you, Obama. They're all saying, I don't want my kids entering the military. If this is what's going to happen, if Mark Milley is up there saying he wants to figure out white rage, and they're talking about transgenders and pronouns in the military, most of these military families are like, over my dead body, literally, that I will have you join the military. Based and what are you fighting for? Are you fighting for usury? Are you fighting for abortion? Are you fighting for sodomy? Like what is this shared purpose that we have to fight for our country right now when we don't even know?
Yeah, Millie's an interesting guy. I mean, he's gone. He was tried at least 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, found guilty of treason. I'm pretty sure he was executed. The guy that you see now isn't Millie. There were, the military was torn between the white hats and the black hats. Now, the black hats, have several generals and colonels and admirals at their, beckoning, but the good guys had the better guys. The one guy, I can't think of his name, but he's an admiral. He's Trump's number one guy. they took over. And the one thing that that we have had going on since the election, since they built that fence,
Mhm.
around the Capitol, you know why they built it, right?
Why is
They
that?
they built that fence not to keep people out, so that they wouldn't hurt our congressmen and senators. They built the fence to keep those guys in, so we would know where they were 24/7.
That's interesting.
That is why. And I heard that from somebody that really, really, really has given me some great information over the years. And I never even thought about that, because you think of a fence is to keep people out. No, it's to keep them in. Because the locks were on the outside, not the inside.
Hmm.
Anyway,
That's
yeah, and
fascinating.
they didn't look at Biden when he drove by. Listen, everybody that works downtown knows there was never an inauguration for Biden. Not there. They had the inauguration too early, which makes what happened illegal. I mean, it's illegal if you don't follow the rules of what the inauguration you're supposed to do for the inauguration. You can't swear somebody in until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Just swear them in at noon. Well, you can't do that.
Yeah, and then they said, well, we had to take different precautions because COVID was raging at that time.
There was nobody downtown. There are pictures now floating around in the last week of stuff shot those days. Tony, nobody was there. It's like it is now. You know who's in DC now? A few people that are tourists. They're just showing up. Lots of buses, no cars, no foot traffic between. You've got basically two streets that surround the Capitol, right? And then if you go the other direction, the White House or the monuments all the way at the end of that. Nobody is on those streets. Nobody is in those buildings. The only people that are in those buildings are people that work there that are like janitors. You see what
Yeah,
I'm
the
saying?
maids.
Yeah, there's no one there. And they'll say, well, it's because, when COVID came around, everybody worked out of their home. Let me tell you something. You 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 get you get elected to be a senator. You hire a staff. You don't not go to work. You're going to work at the capital of the United States of America. Nobody's staying home that doesn't have to. They're staying home because they can't come to work because they don't have a job anymore. In my opinion, that's just what's going on.
So, uh, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask one more question, and then
Okay.
we're going to take this off of YouTube. And then, if you want more episodes, go check this out. This is going to be up on Monday on my Patreon. Monday, the what
Okay.
date is that? So that would be the 29th. For the next edition that we're going to have this continue this conversation here. So, but the last thing I want to ask you, Bruce, and I appreciate you coming on with me,
NFL.
is it's one letter, and that's Q.
Oh,
And
okay.
a lot of people have talked about Q,
Right.
and people didn't know how to access Q, but you kept hearing on ABC News and CBS News and the Washington Post and New York Times about the threats of Q and QAnon. And it almost seems to me that it seems very psyopy that Q was not this person who has this information that's leaking it and getting people all riled up. That it seemed like it was a Fed psyop trying to lure people into some kind of entrapment. What are your thoughts on?
There's been Q for a long time. There was Q, uh, and it was a description of white hats. Uh, there's no QAnon, by the way. If you say that around people like me, or people like the people I know that keep me notified about what's going on, blah blah blah. There's either Q or there's either Anon. There's no QAnon. I am an Anon, although everybody knows my name, but I'm an Anon. I'm not a Q guy, but I respect the Q guys because the Q guys started out as NSA white hats. They were Q. And they're the guys that asked Trump to run for president. Okay. Now, after a while, they even took, at their leisure, they took some, they decided that they were going to make, Q plus. Well, Q at that point turned into JFK Jr., who could
Yeah,
possibly.
they were saying that he's still alive, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I believe that. I believe it. I just believe it because I'm praying it he's alive. But they tried to kill him. So he stayed gone. If you watch that JFK X movie, call me after you see that. And then you'll have a whole nother feeling about what happened to JFK. Because it was really well done. And I've seen pictures of Trump and an old man in a VFW hat, good looking, glasses, probably in his 90s, and it was supposedly JFK. You know who else supposedly lived? I mean, there's more than one, because these people had to, they had to get out of the way of these people because they were trying to kill them. Marilyn Monroe supposedly lived a very long time. She didn't die. They just got her out of there because they were trying to kill her because she was running her mouth about the mob, right? And that's just another one. I just think that if you go with Q being all of us, me and you, and the NSA white hats that have been around for decades, that's good. Trump is, if you ever see Q plus, that's only Trump. That's Donald Trump, Q plus.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. It's so, if you notice, we're not hearing a lot about Q now because what I just told you about Q being what I said it was, which was, the white hats and stuff. That's not as juicy as JFK Jr. But that's probably what it is. And if you go back and if you look at an encyclopedia, not even an encyclopedia, if you just go online, on a really good site, go to the NSA website. If you go back to the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, there were Qs starting out there. See what I'm saying?
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it makes sense that they did that.
Well, Bruce, you anything you want to plug right now, other than you can find Bruce Hall Sports on Twitter, X.
No. I just thank the Lord every day that He's got me alive. Listen, Tony, the reason we're here right now is because Jesus wanted us here. God wants us here, right? I mean, not many people can deal with what's going on in the world that well right now. I don't have a problem with it. I'm fine. He's going to take care of everything. Look, we're going to end up there one day or another anyway, right? Let's at least see if we can't get the truth here and help people.
That's true. Well, I appreciate you being on with me, Bruce, and I appreciate you folks for watching and listening to the podcast. Again, we're going to do another conversation. We're going to talk about 3 big things that which are all related, that I basically can't mention on YouTube without getting kicked off and everything like that. So we'll get into that here next on the podcast. If you want to check that out, that'll be up on Monday, January 29th. But for Bruce Hall, my name is Tony Mazur. Thank you for checking out the Check Your Brain podcast. We'll be back with you another free episode on the major podcast platforms coming up next week. Bye, everybody.